So for me, equity is everyone getting what they need, and us as the adults aligning and realigning resources, time, money, our efforts, our best brain power, whatever it is, to make sure that we are lifting up those who need the most support, because all of our students come with such amazing, incredible talent and potential, every single one of them. And our society, so many other factors outside of the school and some factors within the school are continuing to lead to those disparate results that we know about, that I don't think any of us as leaders, talk to any of my teachers, like, we're not okay with. We're not okay that only this percentage of our black and brown kids are in grade level. We're not okay that we have this incredible disparity where indigenous students are not seeing their own culture within the school. That's not okay. So then what do we do about it? And for me, equity is more of an action verb than just a noun to be defined. It's what are we doing about it at any given point? This mic setup is very nice.
I love this, man. It's so cool. And it's so simple to set up, too. Thank you so much, sir, for making time.
Of course.
Happy
to be here.
Took a minute to get it all scheduled and happening, but here we are.
Made it happen.
Again, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, just learning from you, getting to know you more. I know I've seen you around for at least a decade, and we never get a chance to sit down and learn about your ideas, your philosophy, your story. So many things that I'm curious to know about you. And I really want to build collective wisdom with all the other leaders, principals, and everybody else. So this is definitely a great opportunity. So how about we start by just talking a little bit about where you are, what your school is, and how things are going this year.
Yeah, of course. Well, I just want to start and say thanks for the opportunity. I'm thrilled. I love education, leadership, talking about it. So I'm always happy to get the chance to. And like you said, we connected a little bit over the last couple of years during the pandemic, but again, not as much as one would want. So this is a great chance to sit down. My name's Nivan Khosravi. I'm the proud principal of Maxwell Elementary. It's my 9th year as the principal here, and just really continue to be honored to be in this position. I remember when I first got hired and I first pulled up to the school and I had the keys to the school and I was tasked with leading the school, keeping everybody safe, helping our students to learn and grow, connecting with our community, and what a huge responsibility that was. And I do my best, every day to make sure that I don't lose that sense of responsibility and humility, as well as it's on me to do everything I can for our community to pull us together. So feel really proud of a lot of the work we've done at Maxwell. And we have some more work to go. We've got a lot of areas where we're continuing to grow and shift. You asked how this year is going. I would say we have some celebrations that are just really off the charts. I have an amazing team of folks that we've hired. I would say the best team that we've ever had at our school.
Nice.
We've also had the most late vacancies that we've ever had. And so I know that some of that is not new. Lots of other schools and, where we are in the pandemic, people call it, silent quitting or the great resignation or all those things, right? I've had 5 teachers leave since we left last summer, so basically since the end of July.
Wow.
So it's been very tough. And then we've had some paraprofessional turnover. I pride myself, we typically have very low turnover at our school, and I'm really proud of that, especially with teachers and team members who are people of color. And this year it's been more last minute, really, than we've ever had before. And so we're still hiring. We actually have 2 open positions, if anybody knows about a teacher. But that has presented new challenges that have been, taking my time and attention away from some of the things that I love, and made it a little more challenging for me personally this year. But with that said, a lot of this year has rested on our educators, and I have teachers and a really strong mental health team and just a team in general who really care about kids. And I would say that the folks that we have hired are the strongest we've ever had at our school.
That is so awesome, especially because you have a big team. You just shared with me that you have over 80 staff members.
94. So
that's a high school size.
Yeah, it's actually something that I'm working on in my own leadership of just When I came to Maxwell, we had, I believe it was 33 teachers, a total staff of about 55. And now I'm up to 46 teachers and a staff of 94. And so the type of school we are is, we still, I think, I held the value, and my team does, and our students and parents. We want to be a community school where we know each other and we're connected around the building. It's harder and a little different at that larger scale. There's great stuff happening at Maxwell. More families are choosing Maxwell, which means we've grown in staff. One other thing to highlight, I can't really ever talk about our school without talking about this, is our inclusive model.
Nice.
So we made a huge shift 7 years ago, and it really was teacher-led, teacher-driven. I had a special ed teacher and a third grade teacher. They just wanted to learn more about inclusion, and they could also see some of the challenges our kiddos with IEPs were having when they'd be pulled out of class, and they'd really just be, some students would be waiting for that small group time and the chance to be pulled out, but then they're missing so much of their core curriculum, and they would come for 10 minutes of an intro to a math lesson, be pulled out for 30 minutes, and then come back for an exit ticket on stuff that they missed, right? And so I had SPED teacher and a gen ed teacher. This teacher actually opened up our building in 98.
Wow.
And so huge shout out to Julie Rager, great teacher. She's now retired after a long, distinguished career. But they went to a conference. They learned more about inclusion. They really worked to say, how could we shift? And they just made some shifts with their own schedule that spring. We took staff for a learning lab, and we really tried to say, is this something we could do across our whole school? And then we made a huge shift the next year. And so instead of pull out resource for intervention or SPED, we shifted it right away, all being, push in with co-teaching. Lots of supports from co-teachers, paras, any other kind of support we can give. I think we're continuing to learn and grow, but for the last 7 years, we've been a fully inclusive school with regards to special ed, which means I have students who in another place might be sent to a center-based program, and instead they get to go to school in their neighborhood community school. Even though they have a lot of need, we love them, and we make sure that we're wrapping around supports for them. So that's been a huge success, and we have 11 special ed teachers for our elementary school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so...
I've never heard that before. 11.
I don't know of another school that has that many, and so...
That's phenomenal.
We have a lot of need, and we are really working. So that's part of the other reason why hiring and being short of some folks has been so tough. We need to get people in our buildings so we can make sure our kiddos get the support they need.
Yeah, I was one of my last episodes I recorded was with Jamie Roybal. I was mentioning that to you, and she was talking about one of the things that she would really like to change in the educational system is the inclusion model, and she was talking about if you're a kid and you know that somebody's going to come and take you out of the classroom to teach you in a separate place, everybody knows what's going on, right? As a kid, you're oh, here it is. It's a time where everybody sees me leave the room, and the self-image of the kid, but also how everybody else around the kid helps the kid build their image when they are being pulled out all the time. It's so awkward. Yeah. And it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we aim for is that, you walk into a classroom and you don't know who is the special ed teacher, who's the gen ed teacher, who's the paraprofessional, who's the one-on-one paraprofessional, whoever we can all work with all kids, and everyone's included here. And so it takes a lot of work, a lot of training, a lot of coaching, but it allows us to make sure that our kiddos are seen, valued, and actually get to experience going to school with their peers and not feeling that isolation or that pull-out.
Absolutely. Man, there are two things I want to ask you, and I hope those two questions allow you to walk me through your leadership story.
Yeah, sure.
I have always been curious about your name.
Yeah.
Nivan Khosravi.
Yeah.
I'm Latino, so my name is Nestor Antonio Bravo Gutierrez, and everybody in my culture is super long names.
Yeah.
Nivan Khosravi sounds very badass.
Yeah,
but it also sounds like it has a story that I don't know. And the other question I have is, where were you before Maxwell Elementary? And I wonder if you can answer both questions by just walking me through your whole leadership story or whatever elements you would like to share today.
Of course. My name is a big part of my story. Nestor Antonio Bravo Gutierrez. I love it. I didn't know all parts. So my name is Nivan Khosravi. My middle name is actually Khosro, Nivan Khosravi. And I think names are, and a name is a big part of my personal journey with my identity, my journey in thinking about equity, and just learning about, we are working as a district and as a, in our profession, right, to become more equitable and to make sure that all parts of one's identity are valued. As a kid, I actually grew up in Colorado. So I grew up in, the Boulder area, and I was really around, most of my friends were white, right? And so that was kind of the community that I was exposed to. I spent the first really 21 years of my life, but like even through a good chunk of college, where the way that like on paper people would read my name is Nivan. English has a iambic meter, right? So Nivan is just I think how people would read it. That got internalized, and I don't know where it started, whether it was a teacher or a kid. But I came to a point where when I would introduce myself to somebody who was typically white and not in my family, I would introduce myself as Nivan, and then at home with my family, my name is Nivan. And so that was, and I didn't even like really recognize it. I mean, I think my family is Iranian. Both of my parents grew up in Iran. Speak Farsi. My dad's side of the family speaks Dari as well. And, as a kid, language is another really important and connected part. My parents tried to teach me Farsi as a kid, and then at a certain point I wasn't picking it up fast enough. And I think it's the story you and I as school leaders can both connect to with many in our community. I wasn't picking it up fast enough, and so they said, we want you to be successful in school. Education is so important. We want you to learn English, and so they've really focused on English. And so I'm currently not fluent in Farsi. I'm taking steps to learn. My grandmother passed a few years back, and I actually have a regret in my life where I never learned Farsi and could actually converse with her in her native language.
So your parents spoke the language too, or no?
They did. They tried when I was a kid, and they tried for a while, and I wasn't picking it up fast enough. And so I'd be around family, and it would be spoken in the home.
So they did with like consistency and stuff?
No. So they tried with consistency, and then it didn't really work. So they I wouldn't say gave up. That's not how they would describe it either, but they focused a lot more on English.
English.
So I never became fully bilingual. With my name, though, so Nivan is how I presented, and I internalized that. I even presented myself as Nivan to others. And it wasn't actually until I studied abroad in college and I was going through my program and I was just thinking a lot more about myself and my identity. I said, my name is Nivan. I want to introduce. And so I was in the airport, and I remember I was just about to meet all my other folks for study abroad, and I was prepping myself, Nivan, because I never say it outside of my family, right? And I actually, the first person I met, I said Nivan, and I was like, oh snap, and then I immediately changed it. And so for the whole program, people called me Nivan, and I was like, this just feels right? And so I made that change at that point in my life, and ever since I've really owned my name and the correct pronunciation. And yet I've never once since then introduced myself as Nivan, and still I have folks who will say Nivan, because that's just how English read it, but I'll correct them and I'll say, no, it's Nivan. And so owning that is more than just a name, though. It's owning my culture and knowing that, like, as a kid, I felt like I kind of had to hide that part of my culture, and like we would go to my grandmother's house, large family get-togethers, as many cultures around our world and our communities do. And I would feel like that was separate than like when I would go and hang out with my friends who were mostly all white. So that was just an interesting, part of my development, but definitely impacts how I think about, names. And us as educators, we have to make sure from a cultural standpoint and also from a personal respect standpoint, if a kid tells you their name is this or they prefer to be called that, like that's what we have to do. And then just trying to dive into culture and making sure cultures are valued and a part of our community instead of something that's hidden away.
Absolutely. There are many studies. I don't have it here at hand, but there are many, many, many studies that show over and over that every person's favorite word in any language is their own name.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're every person, like when you hear your name, is the sweetest preferred word to listen to. It's your own name pronounced by other people.
That's beautiful.
It has such a strong identity charge. And when you prefer to be called in a specific way, if you listen carefully and you open yourself to understand why, you just get a beautiful gift from the other person, just sharing a little bit about themselves. So that's so cool. Nivan,
yeah. And you have little ones at home too. Maybe they're a bit bigger now. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and so I'm in that stage where I see them like looking at letters and reading their name, and they have a little puzzle with their name, right? And so what you just said really resonated, because that's and it's a lot of what we do in pre-K and in ECE of teach your name. That's the starting place. And so whenever my kids will see their name, or we'll do the alphabet song, we insert their name, and they just get so excited.
How far apart are your kids?
My son will be 2 next month, so and my daughter is 3.5. So I think they're I should have this more on hand. 18 months.
18
months.
Mine are 18.
Okay.
Both of my boys. My oldest turned 8 yesterday.
Cool.
And my youngest is 6.5. Do you have siblings?
I do. I have a younger sister. She actually just had a baby last week.
Oh, you're an uncle.
I'm an uncle twice. She's got 2.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you grew up with her?
Yeah.
In Colorado. So she's around too.
She's around. We're about 4 years apart, so we weren't quite as close growing up, and now we're a lot closer now. She lives in Northeast Denver, and we connect.
You connected pretty often. So, and then you went to. So, where were you early education, like elementary, middle, and high? It was not in Denver, or was it around Boulder?
Boulder schools. I graduated from Fairview High School, and then went to college, and so that's kind of part of my leadership story. Part of it starts with my name and my identity, but I went to college, and I had incredible privilege of going to liberal arts college. Went to Oberlin College in Ohio. A lot of folks ask me why going from Colorado to Ohio, but I visited the campus, and it just felt like home. It felt like the chance for me to explore myself, and to academics were incredibly rigorous but really like joyful. I got to go take classes on whatever I wanted to. Basically, I took a multivariable calculus, and I never did anything with it, but I just loved being in that moment and learning, and just like thinking about how math could be so amazing. So, and then I've kind of always thought that I wanted to be a teacher. And I think a lot of educators feel that way. When I was in high school, I remember 10th grade English, and Mr. Kennedy, my teacher, and I got my first paper back with a low grade. I was very advanced as a freshman, and then sophomore year I was like, I'm fine. And so I got my first D, and I went to the teacher and I said, this must be a mistake. I don't think that. And he was like, no, you didn't do a good job writing your paper. And so I realized I had some work to do, and I did. I turned it around. And but I just thought like the work of being able to shape minds and to connect with, literature especially. Like we were reading literature that was really engaging. I majored in English in environmental studies in college. But to get that opportunity because teaching and learning, reading is really learning about life and learning about themes and thought in yourself and all of that. So I never, did much about it. I got to experience a really great liberal arts education, and then it wasn't until senior year, and I was like researching and trying to find a way into teaching. And so I found a position in Charlotte, North Carolina, of all places. I went
from Ohio
to Charlotte. And I went and I taught second grade. So I started as a second grade teacher. I always have a little sweet spot in my heart for second grade.
Such a special grade.
Special, the kiddos, the difference of when you come into second grade versus when you come out. You can kind of say that at every grade in elementary, but it's powerful, like the maturity of students. But as a second grade teacher, I had students who came to me, and when someone talked to me about reading level, I had a very rigorous IB, all this other stuff, education myself growing up. I never knew what reading level was. I wasn't exposed. I didn't know that there were so many students who were significantly below grade level and what that looked like, and how, it's no fault of any of those students. It's our society, and it's what are we doing and putting in place. And so I wanted to go serve and make a difference and actually change those outcomes for kids. Got to teaching second grade, and I realized, I had a class where the vast majority of my students were very significantly below grade level. I had a student, Jose, sticks out in my mind, who did not know his letter names and letter sounds in second grade. And so for me, I'm a new teacher. What do I know? But I'm coming in and I say, like, well, what's been happening for the last 2 years to get him to this point? No one had looked at him for having an IEP. It was a very different school system there too. So like the work around multilingual learners, and no one really was thinking about how do I make sure I get the right scaffolds and supports. No one had identified his needs there. And so he's one student, and I put a lot in place and just stayed myself after in tutoring, and I taught figure out how do I teach reading? How do I get the right stuff in front of him? And I mean, he made quite a bit of growth. It wasn't where I wanted to be by the end of the year, but he made a year's growth. He had never made a year's growth before.
Wow.
I think of another student of mine, Laurel, who came to me in second grade, just a very angry black boy. He wasn't connecting with school. He was reading at a kindergarten level, and he was in second grade. And so the lessons that I was told I have to teach, this is the scripted curriculum, you must follow it, they weren't meeting his needs, and he would be so frustrated that, like, I can't connect to this. I can't read the page that you're telling me to read, teacher. Kept him after school for tutoring, and actually had a pretty pivotal moment in my journey as an educator when, like, we were waiting to get picked up. He was the last one picked up, and we were just kind of chilling. He was sitting in the beanbag over by the shelf of books, and we had been doing all this other skills work in tutoring, and he was like, Mr. Khosravi, can I read that book about wolves? And I was like, oh, it's not your reading level, but okay, fine, sure, let's. And so I just got down with him on the beanbag. He wasn't able to read it independently, but he loved wolves, and he just wanted to pull it. And so we just dived in, and by tapping into his choices and what he was interested in, wolves being one of those things, he ended up going 3 years in his reading level.
Wow.
He ended on grade level. It took a ton of time. I tutored him 2 or 3 days a week, every week for the whole school year. But by him having that interest and ownership, it made all the difference. And I wasn't doing well enough before then to actually tap into that. I was doing my best, but I wasn't actually connecting that. So that was choice, ownership, that agency for our students. That's something that really has never left me, and I've developed a lot more as I moved into other parts of my journey.
That is unbelievable. What a beautiful story too.
Thanks.
How long were you in Charlotte before you came to Denver?
So I was in Charlotte for 3 years. I then taught middle school, and I say for only 1 year because middle school was. I love elementary. It was where I connected a lot more. I actually switched from teaching second grade right up to seventh grade.
Oh, okay. That's a jump.
It was a big jump, and I was teaching seventh grade, and I was at a charter school, very rigorous work that we were doing with students. And it didn't really connect. A lot of what I was being asked to do didn't fully connect with my philosophy on teaching. But separate from that, going to middle school and learning behavior management was a totally different world for me. I would say I was still developing my behavior management as an elementary teacher, and then going to middle school. I remember one day I had 34 students in one of my preps, and I walked into class, and I was taught to narrate or whatever, and I was just learning. And I would only have one student who was sitting in their seat. They were all supposed to be at a level 0, sitting in their seats, and I had 33 out of my 34 who were milling about, talking, not following my directions. So I reached out. I asked for support. I didn't know what I was doing, and I got my assistant principal at the time to come and give me some coaching, some modeling. I really appreciated that, and it was very clear that they respected her, and so very quickly this class of kiddos who had some other challenges, they had a teacher leave them mid-year the year before, so it wasn't just middle school was tough, and also it was this class of students just needed a lot more TLC and a lot more structure and strength, and they would be very with my AP, and then she got caught up with administrative duties and left, so it was it was almost worse because we can be on task and make it happen. We can do that, and we're definitely not going to do it for you. So really tough, but really it made me think about, I had a lot of tough moments, this is not working. I'm giving my all to this. A lot of teachers here in Denver, I was getting there at 6 in the morning, leaving at 6 at night, almost every single day, working incredibly hard, and I just wasn't making the impact I wanted to. And I thought about, that's when I really started thinking about leadership, and actually I thought about coaching. So the idea of being able to coach teachers to get that consistent support, or even, I was in my first year teaching, and I was needing more support with the curriculum. I went to my literacy coach and I said, what do I do? I don't know. I'm a first year teacher. I don't know. And the response I got was, well, some teachers have done this and you might think of trying. And I was like, I don't need I need you to tell me. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I kind of built on those experiences and thought about, where do I want to go? Coaching. And I loved elementary. I loved elementary literacy. So I just looked where are some great grad programs for elementary literacy, Virginia, Michigan, and I saw one at Teachers College in New York. Lucy Calkins was a professor there, and I was like, she's the name of that person on that curriculum that they handed me and never gave me any coaching. I was like, that could be my professor. So, long story short, I moved to New York and I went to graduate school.
From Charlotte or from Denver?
From Charlotte. So, Charlotte to New York, and I got to do some co-teaching in 4th grade with a teacher who's very versed in Readers Writers Workshop in the Bronx. I did have grad class with Lucy Calkins.
Wow.
We would literally come.
What a...
we'd come in at night and we'd come and sit down and she would lay down a new framework or a tool or something and say, what do you guys think about this? Let's talk about it. And it was like,
damn.
Like, we don't know what we're doing. But we did. We jumped in, and it was really a great way to be exposed to so many experts, other thoughts about literacy and how we can, and really the whole way of teaching of a workshop teaching is choice, agency, getting kiddos. Not every kid learns the same way. Not every kid needs the exact same thing. Mm-mm. And if I'm up here, on a stage preaching to the choir as my class, that's not the same thing as kiddos actually having their hands in books and connecting. As a kid, when I would be lonely, I would just read books. Stayed up in my night. I said goodnight to my parents. They turned the light off. They left. I turned the light right back on. I would sit up in my bed reading books. And kids they don't have books in their hands as much anymore. And so it was really great to learn that pedagogy and to learn how do I build that choice and honor that choice, and also make sure I'm giving really specific feedback to students, conferring, small group, all of that. Second semester was actually probably the most powerful leadership. There were different tracks you could go. I could have done another semester as like a practicum co-teaching, or I could work with one of their staff developers. And I was like, I want to go into coaching. I want to support teachers. That's what I want for my career. And so I got to work with Kathleen Tolan, who was the deputy director of the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project. And she's passed now, but she ended up becoming my mentor and close friend. And just first week of that semester, I was thrown right in. And they were doing a coaching institute, where she was coaching coaches from New York City public schools and folks around the country. There were 2 rooms of teachers, and she said, okay, we're working on this. You take that room, I'll take this room. And I was like, I'm a grad student?
Damn, man, she threw you right there.
Threw me right in, and I had to just figure it out. Okay, here's what I think I know about, and give that. But it was actually run like a workshop, so it was a lot of the participants doing their learning and thinking, and me just propping and posing those questions and helping guide it along.
She saw something in you that made her confident that you will be able to succeed on that one. And it also makes me wonder if you see yourself, the origins of your need for leadership. Do you think that what sparked that idea of becoming a school leader was that vision that you had about helping other people around, particularly literacy?
Yeah, so I always thought I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to be a literacy coach in some fashion. And working with Kathleen, I mean, with her directly, I probably visited 40 different schools. In my career, I've been blessed. I've visited over 150 schools.
Wow.
And so seen a lot of stuff that I like, a lot of stuff that definitely not going to do that, right? In New York specifically, I got to go shadow her. I even did some of my own staff development, but I got to see different leaders and the way that they align systems for literacy, for coaching. So we'd go, for example, and we'd meet with a 4th grade team at a school in Harlem. Meeting with the team, and they say, this is this unit, here's kind of the flow of the unit, here's some tips and tricks. Do you guys have the books and all this stuff? And in one meeting, the teacher said, oh yeah, things are going well. And then immediately after that, administrator would leave the meeting, the teacher's like, we don't have the books. We're doing our best to do this, but the kids don't have books to independently read it, right? Or I had another principal who had a big kick to do this new PD program for his staff, but he was never in classrooms. Like the teachers would say, like, I haven't seen that person. And that reminded me of when I was a second grade teacher. Like my administrator would come, twice a year, evaluate me.
With a checklist.
But that was it. Yeah. And so for me, it was, I want to have that impact. I really want to support teachers and come from that place of coaching. And like, if we can just make this instruction so amazing, so gold for our kids to just like want to get, like they want it. We have to make sure what we're providing is what they want. If we can make it that way, man, but I couldn't do that without leadership being aligned. And so I did not see schools that were leading in a way that I wanted to. All my family lives here in Colorado. I was very happy, wanted to come back at some point. And so I also love New York City, but it was just time. It was time to come back. Denver was the community where I really wanted to serve. I want to serve BIPOC students. I want to make sure that I'm having an impact where it's needed the most. And so, I came back to Denver and I was in the leadership program. It was called Get Smart Schools at the time. Then became Catapult Leadership. At the time, that program was really focused on charter leaders and opening new charter schools. At least that's how it was perceived. Yeah. But for me, I was a young guy. I wanted to become a school leader. I really wanted to make that change. For me, it wasn't about charter versus anything else. It was about I want to become the principal because I want to create the conditions and the systems where coaches and teachers can have that success. And so went through the program. I did a year of my principal residency, and through the whole time, we were tasked with thinking about a school plan. And so really diving into like, what are all the components that work together, curriculum, assessment, operations, budget, every little thing that really often we're actually not asked, I would say, as school leaders currently. Like, we have to turn in certain planning documents, but how does it all fit together is something that is rarely asked of leaders every single year. Starting a school, the idea of starting a new school, you have to figure out all those things.
All of it.
So I wrote a school plan, and I thought that charter was the direction I was going to go. I actually was in the process of opening a charter school. And so I looked at where in Denver I really wanted to have an impact. Montbello is a community that, most of the schools were not performing on the SPF, and there was just a need for literacy specifically. Literacy scores were not where we would want them to be. So I was doing community outreach, going to local churches, and all the ways of just trying to connect with parents and the families. And what I found is that families want a great school for their kid.
Of course,
right? It's not charter versus something else. For the most part, we want
high quality.
In our community. I want to be able to take my kid to the school down the street and have them have really great service. And so for me, it's not about one thing versus another. It's but at the same time, I was actually in a coaching meeting with we got approved to open as a charter, but 2 years out.
Wow, man. So you got far into the process.
I got far into the process. For me, though, it was like, if I don't actually write this plan, I'm not actually going to move my leadership in a direction where I'm going to get there. And then it just got to the point where we're here.
Let's do it.
So I wrote the plan. We got approved. We got approved for 2 years out. So I would have kind of they called it a year -1 and then a year zero. And then opening the school. Which wasn't my favorite plan, but it was what it was. At the time, I took a job working in central office as the manager of tiered quality assurance, which is a long title that basically means I was giving, cognitive coaching to charter leaders of red and orange schools. So the district obviously can't tell any charter school what to do as directly as they can a district-run school, but giving some coaching on things like UIP, strategic planning, some of that stuff. I really approach that work from a partnership place. Like I'm here to just support and to connect you with districts, things as I can. In that year, though, I got to visit a lot of schools. I got to see a lot of innovation schools, charter schools, and I got the opportunity to continue learning while also like trying to develop my plan for the charter. It wasn't until I was in a coaching meeting with my leadership coach when across her email inbox came, looking for a principal in Maxwell Elementary. And I was like, that's the community where I drive up there every day after work, and I go to different things, and I meet with, and like, I don't have a building. I don't really want to, I don't want to be in the business of fundraising and networking and finding a building and all that stuff. I want to go work with teachers and kids in school. And so I applied.
The stars align.
Stars align. I applied, and Tom interviewed me. I got the position. Really honored and blessed, and I've been there ever since.
Wow. What I love about what I just heard of your story is that from the beginning, you always had it very clear that you wanted to focus on literacy, elementary, be a coach, and serve. It sounds like that's like the staple of what you always wanted to do.
It is. And you named something for me that I think only recently been realizing as much of Kathleen as my mentor and her seeing something in me. And I'm humbled by that fact because I always thought of myself as a leader in some respects, but for a long time, the idea of being the principal of a school, it just felt, that's a big, and she was able to see no, you have the instructional skills, you have the people skills, the way to connect, and that's what's needed for a school.
Which Kathleen?
Kathleen Tolan. So the deputy leader of the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project, my mentor who threw me into that classroom.
Oh, so in New York.
In New York.
The lady for,
okay.
Yeah. Nice. Well, shout out to you, Kathleen, if you're still around. And
she's not, she passed.
Oh, she passed.
Yeah,
she's the one
so she
still shout out to
Shout out to Kathleen. Have a lot of love.
How cool.
Yeah.
This makes me very excited to ask you the next question because I would love to hear from you, especially with visiting over 100 schools, having the opportunity to coach other principals. That gives you such a privileged position to gather and build a little Frankenstein of best practices and build your own ideal of what a great leader is. So with all the years and the opportunities you have had to interact with other leaders, what do you think the greatest attributes of a good leader are?
That is a really, really great question. And I think it's both simple and it's complex at the same time, right? So being a great leader, having a clear vision, leading your people towards that vision, doing it with instead of to, right? Those are some of the very basic qualities of a great leader. The how becomes the work. Right, the how becomes how do I make sure that I'm pushing for change that I know I can see that we can get to that next step. We can go from good to great. I want to push for that change, and I see that we can get there. And some of the folks on my team haven't been exposed to seeing some of those different things, right? And seeing a school that can function at that really high level, or the way that we can do programming with students in a certain way, or instruction that can be really honoring student voice, while also being rigorous and all the other things we want it to be. And so seeing that vision, knowing when to push and how far to push, while also making sure it's bend, it's not break, right? And I think that's been a consistent theme of mine throughout my entire leadership of I have all these ideas, and I've definitely shared some of them with our team, and we've brainstormed and revised a lot of our systems as a school. And there's so many more that I haven't even shared. And you can't do everything well, right? You can't just amalgamate and just add a zillion things and say that makes a school. I also think leadership in a school has a unique quality that's different from leadership in other professions and other sectors.
Okay.
The school year has a particular arc of the timeline. We're all in October right now. October is an incredibly busy time, not just with the work we have to do as educators, but with requirements that come from the state, from the district, lots of other things. May is very different than April, is very different from September. And so
from January,
right? We have 450 students who take the access test, and that changes everything that happens within our system, from scheduling to instruction to coaching. So I think being aware of what we're being presented with and making sure that we're able to, as best as possible, proactively plan for those times of the year that shift and look different, while also making sure that we can respond to the needs of our teachers and our community. A lot of folks in education use the term build it while we're flying it, right? And I can understand the impetus for that, right? It's every day is different. That challenging conversation you have with a team member tomorrow, you didn't know about it yesterday. And so we're right. Yeah. But the more that we can be proactively putting systems in place and proactively creating a culture with the staff, creating a culture with the students, the more it's not everything is crazy and we're changing it up all the time. We're actually like, no, this is either aligning with what we're doing, or very clearly this is a new thing. It doesn't align with what we've been doing, but that's one, spin-off thing. It's not everything is just crazy all the time.
I think that that phrase is very dangerous. It is true, and as school leaders, especially during the pandemic, gosh, of course you were building things where you will flying, but that should not be the norm.
And our kids, more than anything, they deserve that consistency of, oh, I know what I'm going to get here. Kids thrive on structure. They need creativity and lots of other things, but if they know the structure, then they know what's coming, and they know that they're safe here, they're belonging, and then we can vary from it at times. But we have to make sure we're putting stuff in place where we keep that structure.
Yeah, I think I agree. Building it while you're flying, it also allows you to interpret leadership as something that you're not in control of, and you're just like, I'm just going to show up, and whatever happens, we'll go with it. And I think that's toxic, and that's dangerous, because you burn yourself to the ground. You don't produce, or you don't engage in the way that kids deserve, and nobody wins. I don't think having a plan, having values, having a vision for the instructional model, but also for the culture of the school, having an idea of how to treat others, I think that allows you to not say building it while it flies, because you already have a solid foundation.
Yeah. When I came to the school, there was a mission statement and a vision statement. They existed on the wall somewhere. They were like 3 or 4 paragraphs long. And I interviewed every single staff member who was returning. And I said, tell me the great things about our school. I'm learning, I'm new. What is the mission and vision, and do you still connect to it? And I think it's actually 0. It may have been 1 or 0 people could tell me what the actual words on the wall were. And so if we don't know what it is that we're going towards, right, there's a lot of different schools with a lot of different pedagogies, a lot of different models. We crafted that summer in our August Vision and Planning Week. We crafted a mission statement together, and then we spent a bunch of time throughout the next year saying, what is the vision? What does it actually look like? So at Jessie, Whaley, Maxwell Elementary, as an inclusive school and in partnership with parents, we develop independence, critical thought, and a love for learning.
Nice.
And that's it, right? It's one sentence with a few different parts, but that's our mission. And so we open up, if we have a CSC meeting, an SLT, whatever the meeting is, we open up with that mission to say, we may agree, we may disagree. We're going to talk about what we're doing with our kids, but we have to keep that mission in our mind, because we're not just a school that's doing something, right? We're a school that should be aligned towards building that student independence, that critical thought where students think for themselves, and that love for learning.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, gosh. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
That got me excited. I want to go to Maxwell.
Yeah.
Once I heard from somebody I really respect, Dr. Ron Cabrera.
Yeah.
I know you're familiar with him.
I am, yeah.
He once told me, and I never forgot that advice. He said, the principal should be the energy of the building.
Love that.
If you are grumpy, if you're, the weather will be rainy, stormy, and everybody will walk around with an umbrella.
Yeah.
But if you conduct yourself in a way that you actually motivate, inspire, then things might look different. What do you think about that?
I think it's true for better or for worse, right? And so I was actually taught that as a teacher, that your personality comes out in the classroom. And I think when I was first teaching, I was trying to just figure out who I was as a teacher, right? As all first-year teachers do. And I think, strangely enough, who I am as a teacher has been so much more developed as I've become a school leader.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I now, I obviously don't know everything, but I feel very confident I can walk into a room of 4th graders and just be Mr. Khosravi and be my authentic self. And, when I was teaching and people were giving me coaching, and they would say, you have to expect it. It has to be your expectation. I'd be like, I thought it was my expectation. And it's like, no, there's a different feel to walking into a room, whether you're talking behavior management or the way that you are, connecting with the curriculum and the kids and that intersection of the way that you just put yourself into it. I don't know how to describe it, right? And it takes time to learn. Who are you as a teacher? And I think it's the same thing as a leader, right? So I think I'm obviously still in my leadership practice on my journey, and I definitely want to be in a place where I am my authentic self as I come in as a leader.
That is so helpful and useful, because I've been working on that, and I think I'll continue to work on it my whole life. But when I am my authentic self, it is easier for me to have coherence on what I want to accomplish. I took the relay training multiple years ago, and one of the things that I took away from that was a phrase that I also learned and never forgot. They said, as a principal, the school is your classroom, and the teachers are your kids.
Yeah.
So if whatever you want teachers to do in the classroom with their kids, you got to model that to your teachers. Yeah. So when a teacher is struggling, when a teacher is not learning or is not following the expectations, how are you going to approach that teacher in a way that how the teacher feels when you are, whatever it is, redirecting them, coaching them, or whatever it is, the teacher can grasp that feeling and then take it to the classroom and apply that feeling to the kid who's also not there at grade level, you know? Right. That's such a huge responsibility, but also give me clarity around, well, if I show up to that teacher, to that conversation, exactly how I am, with my authentic self, with my energy, maybe we can build something together. For good or bad, because maybe the teacher might realize, oh, this is not my place, or this is not going to work out, or I might find out, you know. So I do think that's really, really, really important, to be the energy. Yeah. There was something else. Oh, the connection between private behaviors and public leadership as well. Making that connection between, you know, whatever it is that you do in your personal life, it's in alignment, especially around your values, with what you do at work, how you show up at work.
Yeah. I mean, I have, over my 9 years as a principal, spent so much of my own personal life also continuing to learn and grow about my own identity, about racial justice, about intersectional justice. And I mean, I've always had, I think, values that align with supporting people of all backgrounds, whether that's our LGBTQ plus community, black people, black students, indigenous communities, people of color, people that speak different languages, right? All of that has always been important to me. And I've also, as a brown person myself, like I also have my own room to keep growing. Mm-hmm. And in my personal life, that's what I spend like quite a bit of time, like reading about, thinking about, and then carry a lot of that into what we do as a school, and saying we cannot be silent, we cannot be neutral, and making sure that I'm connecting my values there with what I can't tell people what to think, but I can definitely share and open people's eyes with different resources and trainings and ways that we can connect. I've tried to make sure I balance those two or connect those two things.
I have always seen you like somebody who's very, very strong advocate for that. Anything that's the outlier, the one that has been overseen, overlooked.
Justice, right? Like true justice for everyone, and we're so far from that in many parts of our society.
Yep, you always strike me as a person who is fearless in that pursuit, which makes me wonder about your understanding of equity. How do you define it?
That's a great question. I think it's an interesting question, because so often equity is a word that we put up on the wall to look nice and to look like we're doing something really important. And I also think having seen different equity or anti-racism or whatever, like different efforts in other schools and other places around the country, there are things that our district is doing that are really amazing. Mm-hmm. And we definitely need to both hold on to that and also continue to push for how can we do better. So for me, equity is everyone getting what they need, and us as the adults aligning and realigning resources, time, money, our efforts, our best brain power, whatever it is, to make sure that we are lifting up those who need the most support, because all of our students come with such amazing, incredible talent and potential, every single one of them. And our society, so many other factors outside of the school and some factors within the school are continuing to lead to those disparate results that we know about, that I don't think any of us as leaders, talk to any of my teachers, like we're not okay with. We're not okay that only this percentage of our Black and brown kids are on grade level. We're not okay that we have this incredible disparity where Indigenous students are not seeing their own culture within the school. That's not okay. So then what do we do about it? And for me, equity is more of an action verb than just a noun to be defined. It's what are we doing about it at any given point? Chris Emden, Dr. Chris Emden, one of my definitely heroes in education. He gave a talk back in.
I want to be like him when I grow up.
Me too.
I think I already have. I think I already have the same hairstyle. Is he bald?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he is. He's and talk about energy. He has got it.
Oh my! He fires you up when he talks.
He gave a talk back in, I think it was 2016, here in Denver. So he actually came. He gave like a keynote talk. They had an equity keynote speaker series. So they had a different person. A lot of other great talks as well. He's not the only one. But he came and he gave a talk, and I have shared the recording with my staff multiple times as like required, like we're all going to watch this. And he talks about so much. A stem with no root can bear no fruit. And he says it over and over. And the way a stem with no root can bear no fruit. And he talks about our kids who have that amazing gift and talent within them. But if they're not connected with their roots, like what are we doing? He talks about not the typical Dr. King quote that is on everything. He talks about Dr. King's last book. He talks about what are you willing to be maladjusted to? So with that, like within our educational system, within our classroom, within the resources that we're getting, educator, principal, school leader, what are you willing to be maladjusted to? And by being maladjusted, then your actions are aligned and there's tension, and all you're doing is working to make things feel right. And so for me, that's part of my definition of equity. What are we willing to be maladjusted to? And even in a system and in a place where things are much better and equity is something that we actually talk and think about way more than many other districts, what are we maladjusted to that we can shift and we can change? And there's a lot that we can do within our own schools, and then a lot we can do by connecting with each other, connecting with the district, and realigning some of those efforts.
That is one of the main reasons why I do this podcast. One of the main reasons why I do this podcast is because I want to build that collective wisdom where we all come together and share, in principle, the same desires and similar goals. And honestly, the more and more I think about equity, the more and more I reflect about our children, every time I come to the realization that every single problem we're facing as a human species can be tracked down to every child and can be solved by investing in our kids. There is no one problem that we're currently facing.
Yeah.
No, dude, not one.
I don't think there's one.
Not one. Hopefully somebody can write a comment or maybe educate me a little bit more. Maybe I'm too stubborn on the way. I'm open to change my opinion, but there is literally not one issue that we're currently facing and that we probably see that we will face in the future that cannot be solved if we invest in our kids. No travel to Mars, no atomic weapon or whatever surgery you can get with artificial nothing.
Climate change.
Nothing, dude. Everything.
Racial justice.
If we focus on our kids for 2 generations in a row, in 50 years, paradise, literally. Yeah. Instead of investing resources in whatever mechanisms of killing people on the other side of Earth or whatever it is, I don't care about political ideologies or anything else. Like, just focus on the kids. The fact that some kids go to school with a bodyguard and have 3 mates at home to help them with the homework, and at the same time, and probably on the same zip code, a kid is sleeping on a minivan, having a bowl of cereal at 5 p.m. and waiting until next day to come and have breakfast. Why? I don't know. I think we should be going nuts about that.
Why is that allowed to exist?
I think we should be going nuts. Like, we should be going crazy about thinking that there is one child tonight that is going to go unloved, unfed, and uneducated.
You said it, man.
It doesn't make sense to me.
That's it.
Equity, it really fires me. I think you've seen me fired up before, but equity fires me up when I think of kids, because as an adult, you can have your old self-agency and we can go back to trauma and biases, and we all have a story. We all are in a way, damaged children, right?
Of course.
But when we think of kids, come on, dude, come on. Like, everybody should be crazy about the fact that we can solve every problem by just investing on those little ones. Who cares about their DNA composition, background, or preferences? Who cares? It's a divine creation of the universe. So,
you said it. I mean, every kid comes with such amazing gifts, and if we could just focus and tap into that, that could change the next generations from that. I mean, yeah, you said it.
It is just crazy for me to think that some institutions, systems, historic approaches to life do not prioritize the growth and development of our kids. I just hate it when politicians make it a talking point, then they get their votes and then forget about it.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
In these same notes, what are the connections that you can make between equity and Black excellence? Are those two things that can be excluded, that can be differentiated, or is it worth talking about both of them at the same time? How do you grapple with both concepts?
I think it's, one, I think going back and reading the Black Excellence Resolution, reading the No Justice, No Peace Resolution, like when those things were coming out from the Denver Public Schools Board of Education, really powerful stuff. Living in the world of policy, right? So policy and then implementation are two different things. But those policies themselves make Denver definitely the place where I want to be, and definitely the place where we're not just saying some word on a wall, but we're actually going to put a policy behind it that is actively anti-racist, actively trying to say we honor and value and believe in the amazingness of our Black people as educators and students in our district. I think that it definitely connects with what we're talking about with equity, when it's all about what we do or don't do. So are we honoring our Black leaders, teachers, students? And I would say that honoring should be like up to the roof, right? Like Black excellence is something that is not created or gifted by us in some sort of a plan written on a piece of paper. Black excellence exists because Black people are excellent. And we need to make sure that what we are doing as educators is honoring that excellence and making sure that it's recognized and valued and seen. And so, we live in an age where somehow that's a dividing point in our society, right? Like critical race theory and some of the other stuff that's going on around the country. And we work in a district that says, Black excellence. We have Black excellence plans and needs. I think that the challenge comes when we let it just live on paper and live as a plan that's divorced from what we do every day. Mm-hmm. And so for me, Black excellence to me looks like, if I walk into a classroom and I see Black students in a classroom, how is their culture and identity and their strengths and amazing talents, how is that being valued and seen in the school? If I walk around a school, do I see pictures of Black people, if this is a school where Black students go, or if it's a school where there are no Black students, or very few, because we know we live in a segregated society and district. And so are we actually honoring and recognizing, are we learning about Black history, right? As I feel so much, honestly, anger that I went to all of my years of schooling and I never took a class on Black history. That was never, there's now AP Black history that you can take. Amazing. African American history and something to that effect. And you can get an AP certificate and college credits in taking that class now. That didn't exist when I went to school. And I think, again, for us as educators and leaders, it's on us to do that work ourselves. I'm still in my own, process of doing that work, and will always be. But it's, we are in a different day and age now where we can, with our students, make sure that we are honoring them, and it's just a normal part of what we do, so that it's both initiative and big projects, but also when I teach reading, I make sure that my Black students are just as engaged, and I'm making sure that they're getting everything that they need, because Black excellence lives in a reading class just like it lives on a big school-wide multicultural whatever initiative.
100%, man. That's beautiful. As you know, I'm Venezuelan, and I've been in the U.S. for 14 years only. Yeah. So I don't have any affiliation to any political ideology, and also my framework for seeing the world, and my framework, my vision of approaching people is conditioned by the way I lived my life in Venezuela as a kid and as a young adult. And the race issues that exist in Venezuela, they exist and they exist anywhere in the world. Yeah. But the discrimination that exists in my country is not based on race, it's based on socioeconomics. Mm-hmm. There are black people who are millionaires and very well off, and there's white people who are, struggling to make it from day to day. So when I came here to the US, I started learning about the recent history of black people, and I started learning about Dr. Martin Luther King and everybody else, Rosa Parks, and so on and so on. But I always thought, as I was learning, there was like an old history. Because Venezuela, the history of slavery and all the atrocities that have been done in the past, in Venezuela is like 400 years ago, like 350 years ago. So when I started comparing frameworks, I was like, okay, well, what happened in the US was 400 years ago. And then I started learning, well, this country is fairly young, and Ruby Bridges is 67 years old. Yeah. She is alive. Yeah. Her kids are my age. Yeah. So I was like, gosh, this is crazy. We are facing the history of this country, but it's not actually history. It's actually happening right now. Like, it's current reality. The people who booed Ruby Bridges out of that classroom when she was escorted out, they're also alive. Yeah. They are watching those news, Yeah. So it gives me, it makes me mad. It makes me disappointed to see those elements of human nature still act out in our current days. Because, first of all, I don't think we should judge our past with our current moral standards, but I think we're beyond that. It is happening right now. So it gives me, that sour taste on my mouth, because I do have a lot of gratitude for this country. I have a lot of appreciation for being here, for having the opportunities that otherwise I wouldn't have had in Venezuela, especially when a significant number of my friends have been murdered, and that's a different story. So it's a little bit of a sweet and sour taste on my mouth for having so much gratitude and love and appreciation for being here in this country. And I think I will always have it, but at the same time realizing that this is kind of fucked up. Yeah. I don't like this that much.
I mean, we're not free until we're all free, right? And I don't know enough about Venezuelan history. It's powerful to hear, and also like it's the stories around the world. So it's like the U.S. we have a lot of problems, right? And we similar. I grew up here. I was born here, and I grew up here, and I have so much appreciation for all that I have, and I try very much to like have my own thankfulness and gratitude practice, and also like. I have students in my school who are not given supports from society, from our like institutions that exist down the road from me. Some from within the school system, right? That's not okay. I'm not okay with that. And then you think about places around the world where like even what we have is in so much better in some ways. There are people who are going through the hardest times of their life and things that would be just mind-boggling to think about in every country around the world. And it's, I don't know. I mean, just like a moment ago, like I'm so passionate about it. And when I hear about something, it breaks my heart. It makes me livid. I'm screaming in my kitchen. I can't take the injustice of it. And so for me, I go back to what we were talking about, like, what are we willing to be maladjusted to? Even in a society that has so many things going really well, I'm still not willing to be okay with this concept of colorblindness that exists in so many places around the country, and even in Denver. That I'm not okay with some of these things, because we have to right some of the historic wrongs, and we have to do it now by focusing on what's happening right now. Right now, we have disparate results in our school system. We have to change that. That's on us as the leaders, and it's on us to invest in our children and to make sure that we say that we don't just believe in you because it's a nice thing to say. We believe in you, and we're going to do the work to make sure that we're changing outcomes for kids.
Oh, man. Amen. During the pandemic, I learned this is disturbing. To me, it is. Maybe people might think I'm too dramatic, but during the pandemic, one of the golf courses in Denver, zip code neighbor to my school, there was like a 300 people waitlisted to be part of a country club golf. I don't know how to call it.
Join the country club?
The membership was $50,000 for people to join the club. Yeah. And there was like over 300 people on a wait list. On a zip code neighbor to my school that has cracks on the playground at least 2 years old that haven't been fixed because there is no money. $50,000 wait list for a country club near to a school where we didn't receive masks and COVID tests for weeks.
Yeah.
In the same city.
Yeah.
Man, when you add the race to a socioeconomics piece, it doesn't discourage me. Honestly, it just makes me really fired up. And when I get to that point, I also need to tap into wisdom or for advice from other people to coach me on how to channel my energy and my anger and my frustration into something positive. Because I think I told you earlier, like I'm working on how can I bring my passion and my love and my care for what I do without turning people off, because there might be like, oh, this guy's just off his rockers. Let's just put him aside. He's not making sense. But man, how is that even with $50,000? I can hire 1.5 paraprofessional or 2 because they get so poorly paid that is insulting to the salaries they received. So anyways, it's when I think of equity and Black excellence, I think of the resources that as a society we're putting towards prioritizing certain things that dehumanize. Like some human beings are worth more than others. And I'm not okay with that. Same with our kids. Like some kids are worth more than others based on the resources they receive.
We have never had truth and reconciliation in our country, right? So like people very offensively will say, slavery was a long time ago. Why are we focused on whatever that, you know, like everything's fine, everything's free country, right? That's something that some people might tout. Again, not trying to get super political, but no, we have never had a chance to actually recover from the harms that were done in history. And those same harms are happening right now. Your example of the country club is a perfect one, right? When there's such like immense wealth in certain pockets and places and it doesn't, you know, and yet we're not focused on the kids in the schools. Like our kids in my school, I don't have kids who have private tutors at home who are coming into school. And there are other communities where that's the norm. If you're not, I mean, my aunt teaches at a private school in California, and it's the norm that you come into the grade level 2 grade levels ahead. It's the norm. And so like if a kid's not way above grade level, so you're ending kindergarten in DRA 28. Kindergarten.
That's the end of second grade, isn't it? DRA 28.
Yep.
Just start DRA 16 is first.
16 or 18, yeah, same, right? So you're 2 years ahead, and it's possible, right? So for me, that's almost more offensive. Is we so often will talk about, well, like I want to make progress, incremental progress. I want to improve the scores by this percentage point. Let's go up by 5%, 10%. Which, okay, you're making a little bit of progress. But if you make that incremental progress every single year, and this, again, is putting a lot of weight in test scores and all that, which is its own problematic part of the puzzle. But you can't deny that there are some kids in some places in our country that are coming into and then leaving school so advanced with some of the skills that they have. And then there are other places where we're not investing the resources to say, well, if you had a one-on-one tutor, you could absolutely be performing or outperforming that other student who had access to all that wealth, all that resource. And so for me, I think what we can do is make sure that we advocate. How can we get what we need for our communities, for our students, and then advocate as a broader system, right? Like it's, if we have I have 29 students in one of my second grade classes. That's a very large class for second grade. It's especially a very large class if I have a vast majority of students coming in really significantly below grade level. It's still our charge to make sure we're closing gaps, moving mountains, making it happen. And yet it's that much harder when it's not 1 or 2 kiddos in the class who are needing a ton of extra support. it feels like a large amount, or everybody, right? And it's not everybody, but it's on us to say, like, what am I going to do to lift and move this big mountain forward? And it can't all be on the backs of teachers.
One of the things, actually, my podcast with Dr. Ron Cabrera, he was mentioning in the conversation that the expectations that every day get put on schools become more and more unrealistic.
Right.
And that is going to make us fail even more, because now schools are faced with mental health, socioeconomics, academics, behaviorally, everything that needs critical attention in our kids and their parents, their mom and dad, grandma, everybody who's the caretaker of that little student, needs to be addressed. And all those needs are, although we all are aware that those needs exist, but we're just putting those in the schools without reflecting on, okay, hold on a second, maybe this should not be a school's responsibility. Maybe, okay, hold on, City of Denver, where are the resources that taxpayers are giving the city, and how can we partner with, I don't know, name an institution that is also taxpayer funded. Come over here, let's build an additional building next to my school, and you're going to help us take care of our families, and so on.
But how is it okay that then that same golf club exists, country club exists right next door, right? And so I would say connecting with other public institutions is important, of course, and then also connecting with what is our society putting our value in. And sad to say, but it all comes down to money. What are we investing in? What are we putting our resources in to say this is valuable to us in our society? And you said it a minute ago, it's our kids. It has to be our kids. Our kids are going to solve every issue from climate change to everything else if we can correctly prioritize and make sure our kids, as you know, they're not born racist, right? Kids are not born apathetic or like mean, or right? Like that's not. Kids have different personalities. I have two little ones who have very different personalities, right? But it's that curiosity, that hunger for learning, that when you explain that there's a problem in the world and you tell it to a kid, the kid says, why is that problem there? What can we do to fix it? That's the first thing out of a kid's mouth. Whereas as adults, we're more worried about protecting our pride, our reputation, our connection, political capital, whatever the thing is, right? And so for me, I just think, what can we do to align and to say our society's value is education, and then we're going to align everything else around it. Think about during the pandemic. We opened some places before other places, and bars and restaurants were open but before schools were opened. That right there is telling you where our value is. It's on businesses that are going to make money, and all of the things that our kids can and will do is not valued economically, so it's not adequately resourced. I read something a few years ago about the value of a kindergarten teacher. I don't know if you maybe read the same article, saying that the value for society, if you were to monetize it, for a great kindergarten teacher is like $270,000 or something like that. And that same kindergarten teacher, glad that teachers just got a raise, but that teacher is getting $50,000, $60,000. Yeah. And they're making the difference that could be all the difference for that child, and not just for that child, for a community. And so I know one of the questions is like, what would I change about public education in my lifetime? I would like to see that it's a huge ask, and it's not going to happen with you and me in our two schools. It's not all going to happen right there, right? But bringing people in and building that connection, and then allowing our society to change to a place where education is so valued that it just feels wrong for our society to not be putting all our resources there. Like, I know that's like maybe the biggest change that one could think of, but that's what needs to be changed. I want that teacher who just taught an amazing lesson to get the same amount of accolade, and we're going to shout it from the rooftop, just like a lawyer might after they just win some giant case and they get a settlement for $500 million. I want that teacher to get that same recognition, because their work is actually more important for the good of our society and our community.
Do you know, when you go to, I don't know if you do sports or not, but every once in a while I go to sports, like baseball or basketball or football. And they do standing ovation for all those men and women who served our country.
Of course.
Everybody give them a huge round of applause, which I think they deserved.
Of course.
You know what my first question is? Why are we doing this for teachers?
Yep.
Why aren't we doing this for teachers? Like, why aren't we giving teacher discounts to go to a movie theater or to buy groceries or to buy gas or to go to the doctors? Like, why aren't we saying, hey, teachers, you're actually our most precious resource in addition to our kids? I wanted to share with you something about our kids. You were saying that our kids are not being born racist and things like that. At some point of our kids' development, they encounter the system and they wonder why things are that way. Yeah. And that happened with my son. Nobody believes me this until they travel with me to the airport together. Sure. I always tell my friends and my family that every single time I fly, I get randomly selected for an additional search. And people, come on, what are you talking about? You even look white. Just wait, let's go together.
Yeah.
My wife didn't believe me. My parents-in-law didn't believe me. My colleagues, when I just wait. So one time, and they do it all the time. They search my bags. They put me aside. I have to, they search. One time it happened with my son, and he was disturbed. He was like, "Daddy, why do they pull you? Why do they pull you aside to do an additional search on you?" Yeah. And I honestly didn't have a good answer. I said, "Brody, my name is Nestor Antonio Bravo Gutierrez, and they see that on my ID, and I'm a young male. I guess I could probably fit any stereotype that exists." Yeah. And when that happened, I got upset. Like my son was questioning me as I was being searched.
Right.
And I got really upset too. I was like, this is very unfair and I don't like this. I was saying it to him as the security person was searching me.
Right.
And I don't know what happened, but that was the last time it happened.
Wow.
It didn't happen anymore. But when you think of systems and you think of how we are set up to just to put others above others, like that hierarchy is very dangerous. But the conversation is super complicated as well, because I really don't know how to. I guess one thing that I would like to see change in our lifetime is to come to a conversation and be honest about this is what a realistic expectation for a school should be, and everything else we will partner to solve. I don't know what it would look like, but if you're going to ask us to be accountable for academic learning and use scores as a rubric,
sure.
Well, help me focus only on that. And if we value academic learning, please understand that social-emotional growth and development, family struggles are fundamental elements that condition the academic learning. Therefore, I should have the help and the resources for this, right? Like coming out of a pandemic and never doubling the resource for mental health and never doubling the budget for, having small class sizes, like never putting that on and I'm not talking about our district leadership, because this is a country, maybe planet Earth system that hasn't been seen. Coming out of a pandemic and telling us that a new curriculum is going to be the solution to the gap. What are we doing? Why don't we become honest and say, actually, as a consequence of the pandemic, many elements of the life of our children got impacted, and this is how we're going to address them.
Or we're not okay with how they were impacted even before the pandemic. And everything you're saying is right on. How class size, you talked about class size. How do we, if we have to, I'll say this, if we have to do everything at the school, right? If that task is upon us and our class size is the same class size as a place that is getting all the other resources, has a PTO who can raise $200,000 in one night, whatever that is, the class size has to be super different, right? It's a different challenge, but we could do so much more if the class size is crazy. 12, 14, right? Like enough that there's still some dynamic with the students and different, but a way that we can say like one teacher focused on 29 students and 15 of them have severe needs is very, very different than one teacher focused on 12 and 6 or 7 of them have very severe needs. That's still a challenging task, and I challenge anybody who's not in education, come into a classroom and give it a try. teachers make more decisions in 1 hour than, I forget the statistic I heard recently, but in 1 hour than like a doctor does, right? And you're thinking a doctor, a surgeon is in there making all these, but a teacher making decisions about behavior and, you know, how to organize the classroom. And then even to your example, if all we had to do was focus on academics, that is complex enough, right? The human brain is such a complex instrument for us to learn how to teach and how to teach all the students when we have different needs and thoughts, and to honor those thoughts. That's incredibly, incredibly challenging all of itself. And yet every other ill and woe of our society is added on, and it comes out in the schools. And then we wonder why we are having, you know, disproportionate results with discipline, with other things. And it's not, I think for the most part, it's not for any ill intent from individual actors. Definitely people have biases and have needs to continue growing, but we're actually solving things that the rest of our society is unwilling to. And these are things that are never really talked about until they're talked about in a way that blames the school or rates the school in a low rating. And no parent is one thinking that like my school is a terrible school because of that external factor. And really I mean, we haven't really talked about it, but parent advocacy is really highly on my mind. And I'm just thinking, I want our parents to know that, you know, and I'll say that I believe in accountability. I believe in accountability up, down. To me as a school leader, I know I have room to continue to grow and do even better by our parents. I want my parents to come to me and say, this is not good enough. The instruction that my child got in math yesterday, like they didn't, I want them to know that there are other schools where students are getting up here and others, and they may not be getting that same level of resource, that same level of direct and incredible support. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. Yep.
So,
but that's the one thing I wanted to share with you from my side. If there is one thing I would like to see changed in the educational system within my lifetime, is classroom sizes. It does not make sense whatsoever for anybody that I have ever talked to justify 35 children in one classroom. Yeah. I don't know, and hopefully somebody can reach out and tell me, when was that law created and why is it okay to not revise that law? But even our DCTA leaders put it on the contract as an okay.
As okay for 35.
As an manageable. 35 kids in a classroom or 175 children per day in a high school.
Wow.
I had my first year as a teacher, I actually had 180.
Wow.
Why is it okay? No, I guess that's not even the question.
It's just not okay.
Why are we letting that still happen? Right. Even though when everybody knows it is not okay. Right. Because I've been wondering about this for like about 5 years, and I talked to colleagues, principals, superintendents, I talked to everybody, and everybody's like, yeah, that's not okay. That's not okay. When are we going to say, no, we're going to bring it down from 35 to 15?
It takes different awareness from our society. And so I think even back to my own journey, like I didn't know that there were such disparate outcomes for kids, and students were reading at a first grade reading level who were in high school. I didn't know that existed, right? I think if that was, and when I have a lot of friends outside of education, and I try and bring them in and say like come visit the school, or like let me tell you, like this is a very unique, like being a lawyer, tough job. Being a doctor, tough job. Being a teacher, there's nothing like it. And so to understand what's happening in the schools and to understand what a teacher is asked to do, especially if they have like a large class size, but for me, class size is one important and very tangible part of resourcing the schools. It's resourcing and valuing the schools such that our society is not okay with the class sizes being 35, or they're not okay with all of the needs, talking about food and social emotional and all the other things, being pocketed and segregated in some schools around large cities in our country. If we were not okay with that, we would change it. And we are not okay with that. How do we make sure that the people who are making bigger decisions about city budgets or private equity and all that, how are making sure that they are brought in to also not be okay with it?
Yeah. The second thing that I've been reflecting a lot on, and I hope I can contribute to changing it within my lifetime, is why are kids learning the content they're learning? What is the rationale for kids to learn about frogs and the tundra and about rainforest? I'm not saying it's bad. It's necessary. That's knowledge we all need to have. But who made that decision? Like, why is it that talking about the comparison between a polar bear and a grizzly bear on a Venn diagram is what a third grader should be learning? And how about emotional self-regulation? Or how about diet? Or how about the caloric value of a cookie as opposed to milk? When are we going to say, pull the brakes, let's get out of the car, let's walk around the car and see if this is what we're supposed to be riding right now? Is this where we're going? And what I bringing that up because we have an amount of useful knowledge that is being wasted by not teaching it to our kids. Like if you have your kids, you have my boys, every parent that's listening to us, every time I look at my boys and I'm like, gosh, it would be so cool if you learned how to use this specific language to describe your emotions and compare it against other people, like your emotional intelligence. Write an essay about yourself. When do our kids write about themselves in the entire 16 years they go through our educational system? When are they going to self-explore their vocation, their passions, their interests, their sorrows? They go to college not knowing what they want, and they get a $100,000 debt to get a degree that 4 years later they're like, why did I do this? So if I could see those two things changed, where we enrich our kids' life by giving them knowledge that is useful today to them every day, and having them in classrooms that treat them like human, not like a managerial babysitting, you know.
I love it. Our kids don't leave school having financial literacy or having skills to take care of their own car, right? And that's really sad. I don't know. I think I'm reading this book right now. It's called Hunt, Gather, Parent. I don't know if you've heard about it. This journalist studied. It's really a parenting book, but so much of it applies to teaching and learning.
Hunt,
Gather, Parent, and she studies indigenous cultures from 3 different communities. One, Inuit people in North America, and Mexican indigenous community, and she learns how the kids in these different societies have very different behaviors. They are just step up on their own. Like the older sibling will just step up on their own to take care of the younger sibling, or to come up and do the dishes, right? And in our society, we are like very typically like nagging the kids, or doing a chore chart, or giving a prize, a sticker, money, whatever it is, right? To do the chores. We have, I'm reading the part about tantrums. It's a pretty natural part of being a child, but the author like talks to these different parents who have kids who have come with the same challenges. Being 2 is terrible 2s, terrible 3, right? Like that's a part of life. The parents react so differently. Their community, their culture teaches that that's this child is being a child, and it's our job as the adults to be the calm one, to be the one to steady them. And so, but one of the most remarkable parts about it is the parents that are interviewed. It's not that they have mitigating strategies to mitigate their anger. Like when a kid is yelling at you, or like being unreasonable it's not that they're like mitigating the strategies. They actually are not. They don't get angry in that moment. And so thinking about as a lot of it applies to teaching, it definitely applies, to parenting, and saying I'm reframing in my brain. You are a child. I am the mature adult. I'm here to create that loving, structural space. You may have just hit me. I'm not going to respond with anger or yelling. So to me, it's a lot about breaking generational, patterns of trauma, and about how do we raise kids. It relates to what you were talking about with vocations, and in these indigenous cultures, they're teaching their kids how to, what we do as a family is we clean up the house and we do the dishes. What we do as a family is we do these tasks together. We take care of whatever it is outside in our garden or whatever it is, right? Like we don't teach kids gardening in our schools. In the pandemic, a lot of people thought, like, what are we doing for food? There's shortages, all this stuff. And the people who had the skills to take care of themselves, now we're a little bit past that with the pandemic, but it's that same need is there, and we're not teaching the younger generations how to do those things so they can take care of themselves, take care of the world. If we all had to grow our own food, what a different world we'd have with, environmental justice, environmental racism, all those. We'd be in a very different place.
100%. Going back to the idea of trauma, the what is it? The thought trend where people say, well, you got to pull yourself by your bootstraps, you figure it out. I did it, now it's your turn, stop, complaining, go do it. Yeah. Dr. Gabor Mate, I don't know if you heard of him.
No, haven't.
Well, he explains very well how trauma changes your DNA.
Right. Maybe I've heard. I haven't read him, but I've heard.
So when we think of slavery, or when we think of immigrants, or when we think of those experiences in our lives that really damaged us, like emotionally and mentally, the structure of your DNA changes. Yeah. And when your kid is born and your grandkid, like that stuff goes generation after generation. Right. And when you look at society right now and you see people with a tendency of just not picking it up and not doing it right, instead of telling them just pick yourself up, it's like, actually, I wonder what your story is and where the origins of those behaviors are coming from, And when I look at our kids, especially the most challenged with behaviors, I always wonder the relationship with mom and dad at home, and mom and dad relationship with school and with their parents, like all those, like the aspen trees, like we're all so connected. At the end of the day, we're all so connected. There is another book, I actually have it there. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it is how our emotional experiences and our life experiences reflect on our body. And your body is the one that keeps the score. Yeah. So, man, I could go for hours with you.
Yeah, it's a great conversation. I'm loving it.
Thank you so much for your time. And before we wrap it up, I wonder if you have a message for any leader that is listening to this conversation and might have similar wonderings.
I think as leaders, it's sometimes a really lonely path, right? Like it's sometimes for me at least, all of the challenges that are happening within your team, within your community, they all come back to you. And whether it's fair or not, all of the challenges that happen within a community and within an organization come back up to the leader. And so what I would say to leaders is, while that onus is still on us, continuing to come from a place of humility, of empathy, and knowing that, if at the end of the day you can say that you did the best you can with everything you've got, we are working within a system that is not adequately supported and resourced. And that's, again, broader than here in our context in Denver. That's how we think about public education in our country. As leaders, we have to give everything we've got, and then also be able to say, like, that was enough. And if you can live with that, this is the best advice I ever got when I was a teacher, actually. I came after school when I taught second grade to my assistant principal, and I said, I want to do more for my kids. I love my kids, and I just don't feel like I've done enough. And Miss Rosa Knight was her name. She said, if you've done everything you can with everything you've got, you can't ask more of yourself.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, man, for your time. I really enjoyed it.
Me too.
Hopefully in the future we can do it again.
Sounds great.
With another topic.
Sounds great.
And move from there.
Cool. Thanks, Nista.
Thanks, man. Thank you. An hour and a half.
Love it. That was a great